Okay, welcome back guys. Thank you for watching. This is the second tutorial on our first part of the introduction to computers. I remember before we ended the other first tutorial, we had talked about parts of the computer, that we described them in different categories that we talked about: input devices, output devices, central processing unit, the motherboard, expansion cards, hard drive ports, and connectors. We said that we shall actually be going through them in details, that we explain one by one. Okay, so here we are with the first part, that was the input devices. Let's take it into this perception that whatever you bring and push in is an input. Let's look at the example at home. You input firewood in the how do I call it? You input firewood in the fireplace. Okay, I don't know how people describe that, but we do input water in a jerrycan. We do it. Okay, whatever you put something, I'm putting water in the jerrycan. Okay, so whatever you put somewhere, you're inputting. So in this case, we're saying input devices. We have the example of the mouse, the keyboard, the microphone. This is a microphone. I'm actually inputting. If I'm recording myself somewhere, I'm inputting. Okay, so a microphone, you have ever been at functions, debates, presentations, and people use microphones. So they are always inputting in a computer that is set somewhere. Okay, so a scanner, if you've never used a scanner is an input device. Okay, a scanner is something that looks like a printer, but what you input there, what you put there, you order scanning, you get the exact printout. So it is scanned and pushed in the computer. So it is input in the computer. A scanner is an input device. A webcam. Different computers have what we call webcams in front of them, immediately after the camera. So a webcam is an input device that captures whatever is happening with the computer. It is a webcam. So all these are input devices, and they are parts of the computer. Okay, let's go to the next part of the computer, is the output device, or the output devices. In our first slide, we talked about the monitor as the output device. The monitor displays what you're doing with the computer, what you're inputting. We also see the printer as part of the output devices, the speaker, and the headphones. So the headphones, like I'm wearing here, are output devices. The printer outputs. Okay, it outputs. So the printer, you use a computer to print out work on paper. For example, if I wanted to give out this slide, I have to use a computer to print out. So when you're using a computer, you actually need to print if you're to get an output. That is a hard copy. Speakers, we say the speaker, you connect your computer to a given device, that is a speaker, and actually start playing using a computer. For those who have ever gone to functions, they normally play some songs, lovely songs that you need and that are matching with the function, but they are always outputting from the computer. So we actually need to take computers serious and have it in our minds that computers use output devices also. Okay, I've talked about the headphones. So this is a monitor, or the screen sometimes, that we call a screen. This is a printer that you order with a computer to print out a given hard copy of work. Speakers they just release sound. They output sound from a computer so that it covers a given range that people can hear or listen to it. Okay, so we have the central processing unit as another part of the computer. This is very, very important. I remember one time when I was studying computer, we used to call it the brain of the computer. The brain of the computer, because it is what interprets, it's what talks about, it's what that interprets what the user has input in the computer. It processes, it translates. Okay, so it's like if you compare it to the human brain, the human brain is the processor. I normally give an example that assuming you're at home, you're preparing some food, accidentally you step on fire. So what happens is the brain has to process. The brain has to process the action, the input that happened. Remember, the input is what you stepped. The fire you step is the input, and there is a signal that it goes through up to the processor, which is the brain here. Okay, so the computer also has what we call a brain, or the brain. In this case, we call it the central processing unit, and it is the CPU in abbreviation. So here we are describing it as a device that interprets and runs the commands that you give the computer. So it is that device or that part of the computer that interprets and it runs those commands. I also used to tell my students that take an example of the people in the church, the born-again churches. Those people are always using translators. A person speaks something in English, but there must be someone else to translate, to put that language, the words the person is talking or is speaking into a simpler language that other people can understand. I might be using English. I need someone to translate for me, to try to translate my words that I'm talking into another language that all people can understand. So I used to say, take an example, like here we're in Fort Portal in Uganda. Go to another place called Kasese. In Kasese, people are using a different language that is not like that one we're using here in Fort Portal. An example of a Munyoro speaking to a Mkonjo. So if you're not familiar with that language, you may find it so hard to actually get people to understand what you're talking about. So I used to say, go to Kasese, pick the elders, start speaking your English, fluent English. But the message you want to pass is going to those elders, is going to the young generation, the young kids, but they don't know English. If they know English, they just know little. What you need to know is that those people should understand what you are talking about. So you need someone to translate, and the translator must be knowing the two languages, must be understanding English, so that you can be able to put it to other people in Rukonjo. Okay, so that person acts as a translator or the central processing unit. Okay, it's what that translates our input into the other language that all people can understand. Remember, the keyboard or the input devices, they input just a signal, which is electronic signal. Okay, so we used to say zeros and ones at some point, which I also talk about the bits that the computers understand, that they use the zeros and ones, the ons and offs. Okay, so we are saying it's also referred to as the processor, as we said. They are in different brands on different types. For example, we are looking at the Intel Core, Dual Core, their I cores, and many more. Okay, so the computer needs the brain that will translate the machine language into the human language that we understand. Okay, so this takes us to another part of the computer, that is the memory. Remember, in the first slide where I talked about the system, we didn't talk about the memory as the part of the computer. But I was right, because we're just talking about a few things that make up a system, categorized in terms of inputs, processing, output, and storage. Okay? So here the memory is where information is stored and retrieved by the central processing unit. So it is like a bridge between the input and the processor. It is that part that is in between the input and the processor that collects information on the input. Remember, what we input is data, raw materials, not yet having meaning. So what we input is temporarily stored on the memory, in the memory, and now the brain of the central processing unit comes and picks what is stored on the memory and actually goes to translate it. Okay, translate it. So there are two types of memories, two types of memory. One is the random access memory. This is what we are, in this case, we are talking about. The one that stores information temporarily, waiting for the processor or the central processing unit or the brain of the computer to come and pick it. Okay? So it is in the main memory, and it allows for temporal storage. So it doesn't, this one loses information when the computer is powered off. The main memory, the random access memory, loses information immediately when the computer is powered off. So we have another type of memory, that is the read-only memory, abbreviated as the ROM. For it, it is the memory that retains its content or its information even after when the computer is powered off or is turned off. So for it, it retains its information. It contains information from the manufacturers. Okay, it is the read-only memory. You can't change the information that's there. You can't remove or you can't add your information. Okay, so it is the read-only memory. Okay, let's go to another part of the computer. In this tutorial, I'm going to try to extend it so that we finish the parts of the computer. I'm sorry if it goes for so long. So we have also what we're calling the motherboard. Motherboard. It's so funny that we have the motherboard, but we don't have the fatherboard. I remember one time I was in class and a student asked me, but you are talking about the motherboard. Where is the fatherboard? I asked, why do you think we need the fatherboard? The student was actually brave and said, you know what? At home we have the mother and we have the father. So if we have the motherboard, I expect us to have the fatherboard. But it was unfortunate that I couldn't present a fatherboard there. But in real sense, we don't have a fatherboard in computers. What we have is the motherboard, and let's know why we call it a motherboard. Before I go through the slide, the motherboard, we're calling it a motherboard because it is where it holds each and every part of the computer. Okay, so all the parts we have looked at in the previous slides are attached on the motherboard. It's like at home, your mom is everything. She does the preparation of food. She makes sure you sleep well. She covers you very well. She teaches you how to brush your teeth. She does everything. So she's the carer of everything. Okay. So in this case, the motherboard is the circuit board. Is the main circuit board inside our computer case. Okay, so without a motherboard, then we may lose each and every part. We may not be having any part in our computer apart from the case. So the motherboard is important. They're saying it has tiny electronic circuits and other components on it. If you pick out the motherboard very well from the computer case, you see that it has some tiny electronic devices on it. So this motherboard connects input, output, processing, and other parts like the memory, the hard disk, the DVD and CD drives together. So that means if it connects all of them together, it is fit to be called the motherboard. You know, for us fathers, we are always not bothered. We don't care. We don't mind whether our kids have eaten or not. So it is the mother that always tries to make sure everything is normal. So in this case, if the motherboard connects each and every part we have looked at, the input, the output, the processing, and many more, it is really sensible to say that it tells the CPU on how to run. So remember, we have the brain somewhere. If we have the brain of the computer, we expect some communication between the computer. So the motherboard tells the central processing unit on how to run, because each and every part in the computer tries to first go through and communicates to the processor. Okay, it first asks the processor on whether to perform a task. Okay, so the motherboard, remember, every part of the computer is attached there. It provides that path, that link between different parts to the brain of the computer. Like we said, the human being has also that kind of communication from the leg to the brain. Then you know what has happened to your leg. You knock your finger, there must be some communication first. There is a channel or a communication channel, like in the human body, that is actually the nerves. So they communicate to the brain so that they bring feedback to you or to the part that has been hurt. Okay, so this is the motherboard, and it is in this form, although it is not looking quite clear, but it is in this form. The next tutorials I'll try to make sure I bring them practically here and we go through. So we have another part of the computer, that is the expansion card or the expansion cards. These expansion cards try to make to help the computer perform better. We use expansion cards to improve the performance of the computer. So in our practical sessions, I'll try to make sure the expansion cards are there. We look at it practically. We see how it looks like in different versions. So expansion cards are parts of the computer, and they are of different kinds. For example, here we're looking at the video card. Assuming you have your computer like I have one here, you're playing music, you want to listen to the music, you want to watch a video, but it can't read the video. The music you had or the song you have is in the video format, MP4. But to open it on your computer, it can't play because your computer cannot display videos. All you need is to buy a video card and add it in your computer to improve the performance of your videos. Okay? So a video card is connected to the computer monitor and is used to display information on the monitor. So we can use it so that it displays our videos. So we have the network interface card, sometimes abbreviated as the NIC. So you may as well have a computer that is not accessing internet. You can't use internet on your computer. So probably the problem could be the network interface card is missing or is malfunctioning. What you need is to add another, or to replace it, to replace an interface card in your computer. So that means when you put the network interface card or the NIC in your computer, then your computer will be able to access it. That means you have improved the performance of your computer. The sound card is another type of the expansion card that also tries to improve the sound of the computer. There are very many scenarios outside there that people are crying out, my computer can't produce sound. I'm playing a song, I can't hear anything. So that means we actually need to add a sound card to your computer so that you help your computer to produce that sound for you. So we have another part of the computer, guys, that is the storage devices or the storage device. The main storage device here in the computer is what we call the hard disk or the hard drive. So it is the main storage device. Now, why do we need storage devices? Storage devices help our computers, or help us, the users of the computers, to store information that we actually use, that we actually need to use in the near future. Like I normally give a scenario that if it happens that someone came at your university, at your institution, or came and stole your computer, or this person just picks the hard disk, he goes with it, where do you get the information? Okay, this is just if I have stored enough information on my computer and someone picks it, will be able to use that information at any place he finds, provided he gets a computer and adds this hard disk. Now look at a scenario where we are using a computer today and we don't store our information. We capture students' details right now, we type very well our list, and then we don't store the list. It happens that tomorrow we need the same list. That would mean we are going to retype the information. We're going to retype the information, and that will be very hectic and we'll be doing nothing. What we need is to do something once, save it, recall it when we need it. Okay? So we use storage devices to store the information, whatever information we use or we need to use at some point. We have also flash drives or flash disks, are also storage devices. You have looked at CDs and DVDs. They're also storage devices. So we put information there. If we don't store on hard paper by printing, we can store on a soft copy that is information that we can't touch, information that we can't see, but it's there. We can retrieve it. The goodness with storing information is that we don't lose it if the drive is not damaged. There are also provisions of recovering the information. In today's technology, there is what we are calling cloud storage. People have a lot of space for storing the information in cloud. Okay, so this is better as compared to hard copy storage, kind of. If it rains, you lose your papers. We have rats in different regions, and different regions of the world can destroy the information and you fail to get it again. Okay, this takes us to the very interesting part and the last part for our parts of the computer, that is the connections. The ports and connectors. So we have looked at all the other parts of the computer: the hard disk, the motherboard, the central processing unit, the memory, the monitor, everything we have looked at. But remember, all those parts need to be connected to one another. What we need is the connectors. In simple terms, the cables and the ports, the holes where to put them. Okay? So a cable is attached somewhere. Take an example of a power socket. You need a cable to put it in a power port on a power socket so that you can pick power. Okay? So we are looking at the ports and connectors. For example, here we have started with the universal serial bus. Is a cable, kind of, is a connector. So in this slide here, we are going to look at a kind of port with its relevant connector or its cable. So a USB cable, we have looked at different kinds of connectors. Let me see whether I have something here. Oh my god, I don't have a USB here with me, but oh, I can get it. I see, this is a USB cable. It is a USB cable. This is for the mouse, an optical mouse. So this USB cable goes on somewhere, goes onto the port that is called a USB port. So in this case, every cable will be going to a given port. So we have what we also call the firewire. It is similar to the USB cable, but for it is faster than the USB. We are going to look at all these practically in some slides. We have the network port. This is what we are presenting here. We have the network port. This network port goes in a network, the network cable goes in the network port. It is sometimes called the Ethernet cable. Okay, it is sometimes called the Ethernet cable. So we have the Ethernet cable or the network cable that goes in a network port. We have a parallel port and serial port. We have a display adapter and power. So the power cable goes in a power port. Okay, so that makes the end of our second tutorial. We have looked at the parts of the computers that we described up here, like I said before we left for the first slide, the inputs, the outputs, the central processing unit, the motherboard, the expansion card, and other parts of the computer. Thank you for watching this tutorial. Let's meet in the third tutorial for this class, and then we continue. Remember to subscribe to our channel. Please, the more you subscribe, the more we get more videos for us to watch, and I'll be very grateful if you subscribe. Let's learn together computer, let's learn together technology, and we will make it. I hope students are learning this. Let's learn this. This is for the beginners, and it is better for us at all levels. Whether you're a student or you're not, please watch these tutorials. They will help you. Thank you for watching. Let's meet, guys, in the third video.